Welcome to Management 3120, Operations Management. I am Professor Bill Perkins, and this lecture is based on material taken from the textbook Principles of Operations Management, Sustainability and Supply Chain Management, 10th edition, by Heiser, Render, and Munson. So we're going to get started. First, we're going to go over the chapter's outline. We're going to discuss what is operations management, and we're going to engage in organizing to produce goods and services. We're going to talk about the supply chain. We're going to talk why would someone study operations management, and then we're going to get into what operations managers do. Furthermore, we're going to discuss the heritage of operations management, operations for goods and services, and the productivity challenge, and the current challenges in operations management. And then we're going to get into ethics, social responsibility, and sustainability. Now we're going to go over our learning objectives. First, we're going to define operations management. Then we're going to explain the distinction between goods and services. We're going to explain the difference between production and productivity. We're going to compute single-factor productivity, and then we're going to compute multi-factor productivity. And then we're going to identify the critical variables in enhancing productivity. So what is operations management? Operations management, better known as OM throughout this course, is the set of activities that create value in the forms of goods and services by transforming inputs into outputs. It is also important to know that production is the creation of goods and services. So you're going to want to know these key terms. And moving along, to create goods and services, all organizations must perform three functions identified on this slide. So first you have marketing. Then you have production / operations, and the third being finance and accounting. So firms must create demand, satisfy that demand, and manage and monitor the financial flows associated with creating and satisfying that demand. So figure 1.1 here illustrates how a bank performs the three functions of marketing, productions or operations. So draw your attention to the blue area, which depicts the operations functions of the firm. So you have your teller scheduling, you have check clearing, collection, transaction processing, facilities design and layout, vault operations, maintenance and security. So when you think about a bank, these would be the operational facets of the bank. So this is your, where you would have to have some operations management efforts. Moving along, so the supply chain is described at the beginning of the textbook to emphasize that competition in the 21st century is no longer between companies, it is between supply chains. Companies no longer try to do everything themselves. Rather, they outsource numerous functions and activities to specialized providers. So supply chains have members who effectively collaborate to foster an enormous competitive advantage. So you'll receive more in-depth exposure on this topic in Chapter 2, Chapter 11, and Chapter 11 supplement. So why study operations management? In most cases, a large percentage of organizational revenue is spent on the operations management function. So remember, operations management is one of three major functions of any organization. We want to study how people organize themselves for productive enterprise. Furthermore, we want to know and need to know how goods and services are produced. We want to understand what operations managers do. And finally, just as I stated, operations management is such a costly part of an organization. And this slide shows a common circumstance that is often the best and easiest way to meet improved contribution targets is through finding efficiencies in operations. Not all the time is it about cutting cost of material. Sometimes you can't. You can't change the scope of a project just to save, because you may lose a stakeholder in the event. So it may just be like, where do we improve our efficiency in our processes? In this particular example, the hefty requirements for the marketing and finance options might make them an infeasible way. We'll leave this up here just so you can take it in. And if you look at the marketing option, you have an increase in sales revenue of 50%, and your sales were at 150,000, cost of goods 120,000. Gross margin becomes 30,000, financial costs 6,000, subtotal 24,000, and then your taxes at 25% minus 6,000, and it brings you to an 18,000 contribution. So all good managers, including operations managers, perform the basic management functions identified on this slide. If any of you had the Intro to Management course, that was a prerequisite for this, so most of you probably had it, where planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling were comprehensively covered. So you're going to be able to take that information from your prerequisite course and integrate it here to help you with those subordinate skills for this course. The 10 strategic operations management decisions are useful to cover, one by one, not always as a precursor to the rest of the text, but also to emphasize the wide array of responsibilities that are under an operations manager's jurisdiction. Okay, you have the design of goods and services to worry about. You have decisions to make in that department. Managing quality, process and capacity strategy, location strategy, layout strategy, human resources and job design, supply chain management, inventory management and scheduling, and maintenance. And to the right, you'll see the corresponding chapters that they're comprehensively covered. So starting off with the first two strategic decisions, design of goods and services defines much of what is required of operations in each of the other operation management decisions. For instance, product design usually determines the lower limits of cost and the upper limits of quality, as well as major implications for sustainability and the human resources required. Now, design of goods and services will be covered more in depth in Chapter 5 and the corresponding supplement. Now, managing quality determines the customer's quality expectations and establishes policies and procedures to identify and achieve that quality. Managing quality will be covered more in depth in Chapter 6 and the corresponding supplement. Process and capacity strategy determines how a good or service is produced, i.e. the process for production, and commits management to specific technology, quality, human resources, and capital investments that determine much of the firm's basic cost structure. You will learn more about process and capacity strategy in Chapter 7 and the corresponding supplement. Now, location strategy requires judgments regarding nearness to customers, suppliers, and talent, while considering costs, infrastructure, logistics, and government. You'll learn more about location strategy in Chapter 8. Now, layout strategy requires integrating capacity needs, personnel levels, technology, and inventory requirements to determine the efficient flow of material, people, and information. And we will cover layout strategy more in depth in Chapter 9. Human resources and job design determines how to recruit, motivate, and retain personnel with the required talent and skills. People are an integral and expensive part of the total system design, and we will cover human resources and job design further in Chapter 10. Now, supply chain management decides how to integrate the supply chain into the firm's strategy, including decisions that determine what is to be purchased from whom and under what conditions. Supply chain management will be explored further in Chapter 11 and the corresponding supplement. And then you have inventory management, and that considers inventory ordering and holding decisions and how to optimize them as customer satisfaction, supplier capability, and production schedules are considered. Inventory management will be touched on in chapters 12, 14, and 16. Now, scheduling determines and implements intermediate and short-term schedules that effectively and efficiently utilize both personnel and facilities while meeting customers' demands, and scheduling will be covered in Chapter 13 and 15. And finally, maintenance. Maintenance requires decisions that are considered facility capacity, production demands, and personnel necessary to maintain a reliable and stable process. We will cover maintenance in the final chapter, Chapter 17. So, how does one get started in a career in operations management? Business students who know their accounting, finance, statistics, and operations management have an opportunity to assume entry-level positions in an array of the following areas. Those areas include what's on the slide here: technology, facilities, space utilization, strategic issues, response time, people and team development, customer service, quality, cost reduction, inventory reduction, and productivity improvement. So as you move throughout this course, achieving a background in each of the 10 strategic operations management decisions that we just covered will enable you to take on a career in operations management. Each of the 10 strategic decisions are also corresponding with the business and or management courses that you can or may have to take to develop yourself further. And about 40% of all jobs are in operations management. That's right, about 40% of all jobs out there are in operations management. Therefore, it's an excellent career to pursue. So the following professional organizations provide various certifications that may enhance your education and be of help in your career. And here they are: the Association for Operations Management, APICS, the American Society for Quality, the Institute for Supply Management. You have Project Management Institute, which has quite a few certifications you can get, and they really validate you and will certify you for excellent career potential, salary potential even. The Project Manager Professional certification through PMI is an excellent and very heavily sought after certification to have. Then you have the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, and then the Charter Institute of Procurement and Supply. So this is just a list, a few of the certifications that are out there that can help you along in gaining a position in supply chain management, operations management, project management, any of the facets of operations management are associated with this course. So this slide, figure 1.4 from the textbook, presents a nice summary of the past and future of operations management. So looking at the cost-focused initiatives of operation management, early concepts covering from 1776 to 1880, concentrated on labor specialization with the work from Smith, Babbage, and Eli Whitney. Everybody remembers Eli Whitney from the cotton gin, but he's also associated with a lot of the pioneering effects of operations management. So it'd be a good idea to go into your textbook, look at figure 1.4 and the corresponding paragraphs, and learn a lot about these operation management milestone eras that we're going to talk about. So 1880 to 1910 brought us the scientific management era involving the introduction of the Gantt chart. I know I just spoke about project management. Anybody who's engaged in project management knows about the Gantt chart. You can essentially break down all your tasks into time and hypothesize, how long your project's going to take, which will also help you in calculating cost. You have the Gilbreth's motion and time studies, Taylor's work involving process analysis, and finally Erlang's querying theory. And then we moved on into 1910 to 1980, and that steered us to the mass production era. By 1913, Henry Ford and Charles Sorensen combined what they knew about standardization parts with the quasi-assembly lines of the meatpacking and mail-order industries, and added the revolutionary concept of the assembly line where men stood still and material moved. Moving forward in time, there was a transition to focus on quality, where you had the lean production era from 1980 to 1995, and that introduced concepts such as just-in-time, computer-aided design, electronic data interchange, and also known as EDI. And you have the Total Quality Management, or TQM, movement, as well as the Baldrige Award, Empowerment, and the caravans. Now, quality control has made significant contribution to the field of operations management. In 1924, Walter Schur combined his knowledge in statistics with the need for quality control and provided the foundations for statistical sampling in quality control. In 1950, W. Edwards Deming believed, as did Frederick Taylor, that management must do more to improve the work environment and processes so that quality can be improved. The mass customization era, which began in 1995 until 2005, and that introduced internet, e-commerce, enterprise resourcing planning, international quality standards, or ISO. That's the ISO, the ISO, I believe it's 6,000, 9,000. There's different certifications you can get. Supply chain management came out around this time. Mass customization, build to order, and radio frequency identification, or RFID. Then moving on to 2005 until 2020. That's right, we're moving forward until next year. And that will be referred to as the globalization era, where concepts such as global supply chains, growth of transnational organizations, instant communications, sustainability, and ethics in global workforce and logistics are the focus. Operations management will continue to progress as contributions from an array of disciplines stemming from the industrial engineering to statistics to the physical sciences to information technology all improve decision making. So you can pretty much link all these to the decision making improvements that we see today. So this slide just depicts the major milestones I just covered. The field of operations management is relatively young, but its history is rich and interesting. So I'm going to let you look at these. We just spoke about them. Now, our lives in the operations management discipline have been enhanced by innovations and contributions of numerous individuals. And this is just some of them. And a lot of these we covered already 2 slides ago. I'll leave this up here for you to look at. So remember that services are economic activities that typically produce an intangible product, such as education, entertainment, lodging, government, financial, and health services. Also, the manufacturing service distinction is more like a continuum, as most manufacturing companies provide some services and most service companies provide some goods. Nevertheless, the two extremes differ in important ways, which may impact how operations managers approach this decision making in one case versus another. And the operations activities for both goods and services are often very similar. For instance, both have quality standards, are designed and produced on a schedule that meets customer demand, and are made in a facility where people are employed. However, some major differences do exist, which are presented in this table. I'd like to point out that the distinction between goods and services is not always clear-cut. Almost all services and almost all goods are a mixture or a hybrid of a service and a tangible product. So even services such as consulting may require a tangible report or support material to facilitate the service. And similarly, the sale of most goods will require a service. Now think about products like automobiles. Now there is a service component, a financial component, and manufacturing of the tangible product. Now service activities can be an integral part of production, and human resource activities, logistics, accounting, training, field service, and repair are all service activities but they take place within a manufacturing organization. So they are service, but they are in a manufacturing organization. So very few services are pure, whereas they do not, they have no tangible component. Careers such as counseling may be one of the exceptions. And services constitutes the largest economic sector in the post-industrial societies. Until about 1900, most Americans were employed in agriculture. Increased agriculture productivity allowed people to leave the farm and seek employment in the city. And this slide illustrates tremendous growth of services over time. After peaking around 1950, the percentage of U.S. workers in manufacturing has declined steadily, while service employment continues to capture a larger and larger share of jobs. And the significant productivity increases in agriculture and manufacturing have allowed more of our economic resources to be devoted to services. Now, consequently, much of the world can now enjoy the pleasures of education, health services, entertainment, etc. This slide depicts examples of firms and percentages of employment in the U.S. in various sectors of the economy. More than half of you will likely end up for a firm in the service sector based on the trends. And salaries in services presents a mixed bag. Some jobs, such as airline maintenance, operations managers, pay very well, while others lag in the national average. Not all jobs and services are low paying, but some can be. Commerce categories of the 33 service industries do indeed pay below all the private industry averages. And of these, retail trade, which pays only 61% of the national private industry average, is large. But even considering the retail sector, the average wage of all service workers is about 96% of the average of all private industries. Now, productivity. The basic formula for productivity is simple. Outputs are divided by inputs. This sometimes varies as interest focuses on a specific output or input, or a set of outputs or inputs. Now, at the firm level, productivity improvement usually leads to greater products. At a macro level, productivity improvement in an economy usually leads to a higher standard of living. Now, productivity improvement means getting more bang for the buck. Either one, reducing inputs while keeping outputs constant, or two, increasing output while keeping the inputs constant. And here, just this slide goes over, productivity is the ratio of outputs, goods and services divided by the inputs. So just make sure you get that. There will definitely be questions on this. You're going to have knowledge of this for the subordinate skills for the rest of the course. So please pay attention to this slide. And the objective is to improve productivity. Important note, production is a measure of output only and not a measure of efficiency. You may see that again. Maybe, maybe not. Now this slide, figure 1.6, describes how productivity in the U.S. economy grows at about 2.5% per year, and it's comprised of capital factors, 0.95%, and you have labor factors, 0.25%, and manager factors, 1.3%. And this picture also suggests that an effective feedback loop is an important component for continuous improvement. Now you're going to draw your attention to improving productivity at Starbucks. It's in the textbook. This slide describes how some relatively simple management and equipment changes improved Starbucks productivity significantly, which led to six-figure increases in revenue outlet. So they stopped requiring signatures on credit card purchases under $25. That saved 8 seconds per transaction. There was a change in the size of the ice scooper. That saved 14 seconds per drink. New espresso machines saved 12 seconds per shot. So you see how all this adds up, and you also see the breakdown between money and time. How time can be broken down to money and vice versa. And for effectiveness and efficiency improvements or process improvements, these seconds here to the right, they add up. They add up, and they transition to money for the organization. So by redesigning a scooping motion and cutting 12 seconds off the hot espresso shot, resulted in an increase in the average transactions per hour to 11.7. So that's 11.7 more transactions per hour. A 46% increase in yearly volume by $250,000 to about $1 million. So the overall result was a 27% improvement in productivity and approximately 4.5% per year. In the service industry, a 4.5% per year increase is very, very tasty. I'm going to let you digest this formula here before I start speaking to it. So the next three slides will present the most common productivity formulas used. And this slide illustrates the basic formula. And this slide shows the basic formula, and we're going to get into it where we're going to illustrate how it's used. It is important to note that the measurement of productivity can be quite direct. Such is the case when productivity is measured by labor hours per ton of a specific type of steel. Now, although labor hours is a common measure of input, other measures such as capital or dollars invested or materials, for example, for the example we just used of steel, it would be tons of ore. or it could be an energy or kilowatts of electricity can be used. And this slide provides an example of a single factor productivity measure. In this case, the common measure of labor productivity. Therefore, if units produced were 1,000 units and the labor hours used is 250, then 1,000 divided by 250 would equal 4 units produced per labor hour. You see how that works? I want to go over that again so while you're looking at the slide. So here's an example of a single factor productivity measure. And as you look at the slide, okay, so looking at this slide, if the units produced were 1,000 units and the labor hours used is 250, then 1,000 divided by 250 would equal 4 units produced per labor hour. Now this slide depicts a multi-factor productivity measure. Note that a multi-factor measure only makes sense if all the inputs are expressed in the same units, which would usually be a monetary unit such as dollars. Now, multi-factor productivity is also known as the total factor productivity. So you may see it broken down as total factor, but in most cases throughout this course, you're going to see multi-factor. Now, multi-factor productivity is calculated by combining input units. And in this case, the inputs are labor, material, energy, capital, and miscellaneous. Now, these individual inputs will comprise the denominator of the equation. Now we'll go through an example. So you have Collins Title Insurance. This is in the text. Collins Title Insurance wants to evaluate its labor and multi-factor productivity with a new computerized title search system. Now the company has a staff of 4, each working 8 hours per day. So for a payroll cost of $640 per day and overhead expense of $400 per day. Now Collins processes and closes on 8 titles each day. So the new computerized title search system will allow the processing of 14 titles per day. Although the staff, their work hours, and pay are the same, the overhead expenses are now $800 per day. And here Collins uses the basic formula to compute labor productivity and multi-factor approach to compute the multi-factor productivity. Okay. So looking at the first computation, the labor productivity with the old system being 8 titles per day, divided by 32 labor hours computes to 0.25 titles per labor hour. Okay, see it there on the old labor productivity formula. Under the new system, it is computed by dividing 14 titles per day by the 32 labor hours, which equals 0.4375 titles per labor hour. You got that? So again, here Collins uses basic formula to compute labor productivity and multi-factor approach to compute the multi-factor productivity. And looking at the first computation, the labor productivity with the old system being 8 titles per day divided by 32 labor hours, and that computes to 0.25 titles per labor hour. And in turn, the labor productivity under the new system is computed by dividing 14 titles per day by the 32 labor hours, which equals 0.4375 titles per labor hour. Moving slow with the mathematic formulas, because I know many of you are, management students. maybe a facet of management that you weren't expecting a lot of math for data-driven decisions, but that's essentially operations management, process improvement, and activities like gap analysis. You may find yourself using a lot of mathematical formulas. So, whereas you may be looking just, this course is a required course for your management program, but you weren't expecting math. I'm going to go slow with these, move very slow with the mathematical formulas because I want to make sure you get them right. And here we're computing multi-factor productivity with the old system, being 8 titles per day divided by the total of payroll cost and overhead expense. 640 plus 400 is 1,040. And that comes out to being 0.00769 on your calculator or your piece of scratch paper. Or it's going to be, for the purposes of this course, you're going to round that up to 0.0077 titles per dollar. Okay. Again, we're computing multi-factor productivity with the old system. That's 8 titles per day divided by the total of payroll cost and overhead expenses. And that's 640 plus 400 equals 1,040. And this will compute to 0.00769, rounded to 0.0077 titles per dollar. And here we have another computation of a multi-factor productivity, but with the new system, wherein we have 14 titles per day divided by the payroll cost of 640 plus 800 in overhead expenses. That equals 1,440, which computes to 0.0097 titles per dollar. Again, we have another computation of a multi-factor productivity, but with the new system, wherein we have 14 titles per day divided by the payroll cost of 640 plus 800 in overhead expenses, and that comes out to be in 1,440, and that computes to 0.0097 titles per dollar. In summary, looking at the 3 slides, labor productivity has increased from 0.25 to 0.4375. The change is computed by subtracting 0.25 from 0.4375, which comes to 0.1875. Then you divide by 0.25, which equals the 0.75, or a 75% increase in labor productivity. So multi-factor productivity has increased from 0.077 to 0.0097. Now this change is computed by subtracting 0.0077 from 0.0097, which equals 0.002, then dividing by 0.077 for a 0.26, 26% increase in multi-factor productivity. Now, what this tells us is that both the labor, which is single factor, and the multi-factor productivity measures show an increase in productivity. However, the multi-factor measure provides a better picture of the increase because it includes all the costs connected with the increase in output. Now, these potential problems with productivity should be emphasized. If evaluating performance of a plant, a manager, a division, and so forth, it is important to compare apples to apples and evaluate individuals on outcomes over which they have control. Here, quality may change while the quantity of inputs and outputs remain constant. External elements may cause an increase or decrease in productivity, and precise units of measure may be lacking. The 3 factors identified on this slide are critical to achieving improved productivity. The percentages listed represent their respective historical contributions to the productivity improvements. You have labor contributes to about 10% of the annual increase. Capital contributes to about 38% of the annual increase to productivity improvement, and management contributes about 52% of the annual increase. So management has the greater contribution to productivity improvement. So that tells you it's more about your human capital to increase improvement, and not the capitals associated with your invested into your company, like supplies, for example. Money would be capital investment. So it's more the management of people. It's the human factor. So as we see in this slide, sometimes training and education produce more productive workers, while in other cases the workers' general health, along with the environmental factors, may determine their respective capabilities. So, the challenges in maintaining and enhancing skills in the midst of a rapidly changing technology and knowledge, human capital development, training your people, HR initiatives, human resources initiatives. When I say HR, it's not cheap. However, from what we've seen in the previous slide, there's definitely a great concern to ensure that we invest in the people. As unbelievable as it seems, many U.S. high school students cannot solve very simple math problems, such as those shown in figure 1.7 on this slide. It has been suggested that perhaps up to 25% of U.S. workers lack the basic skills needed for their current job, and the situation may even be worse in some other countries, particularly some of the low-wage countries. Historically, annual capital investment in the U.S. has increased at an annual rate of 1.5% after allowances for depreciation. In general, higher investment levels lead to higher productivity gains. There's definitely a correlation. And at 52%, management provides the biggest contribution towards productivity gains, as we said a few slides ago. Effective management is challenging, especially now that such a labor force is in post-industrial countries has migrated from manual work to work based on knowledge or knowledge societies, and requires ongoing education. So the more technological advancements you see, the more focus we're going to need on development for personnel, and maybe not as much on of a focus on the processes, procedures, equipment, things like that, actually developing the people. And the items on this slide all contribute to the difficulty in improving productivity in the service sector. So, productivity improvement in services is still difficult because typically labor intensive. It's very labor intensive. Frequently focused on unique individual attributes or desires, or often an intellectual task performed by professionals. And it's often difficult to mechanize and automate, and often difficult to evaluate for quality. In 2010, Taco Bell completed the rollout of its new grill-to-order kitchens by installing water and energy-saving grills that conserve 300 million gallons of water and 200 million kilowatt hours of electricity each year. Other measures of effectiveness and efficiency were taken, which can be seen on this slide. So they revised the menu, designed meals for easy preparation, shifted some preparation to suppliers, and efficient layout and automation efforts were taken, or procedures were put in place. Training and employee empowerment there we go. We're getting into that management and leadership of personnel. And new water and energy saving grills that we just spoke about. So those were the initiatives. And these are the results. So the green-inspired cooking method saved the company's 5,800 restaurants $17 million per year. Now, effective operation management has resulted in productivity increases that support Taco Bell's low-cost strategy. And Taco Bell is now the fast food low-cost leader with a 58% share of the Mexican fast food market. And much like Starbucks, here these are just like little wins that transition to long-term gains. So you have preparation time cut to 8 seconds, management span of control increased from 5 to 30. And we all remember span of control. That's where we increase our ability of control over our subordinates or organization and be able to still maintain quality without it getting chaotic. In-store labor cut by 15 hours a day. Floor space reduced by more than 50%. Stores averaged 164 seconds per customer from drive up to pull out. Water and energy savings grills conserve 300 million gallons of water and 200 million kilowatts of electricity each year. And, we spoke about the green-inspired cooking method, saving 5,800 restaurants, 17 million per year. Pretty significant. Now, some traditional operations areas of emphasis are changing. So new challenges based on these changes are identified on this slide. Each of these issues will be explored more thoroughly as the course progresses. We're going to talk about globalization. We're going to talk about supply chain partnering, sustainability, rapid product development, mass customization, and lean operations. Now, managers must address the challenges identified on this slide along with many other challenges in an ethical and socially responsible way while meeting demands of the marketplace. So these are some of the challenges facing operations managers. To develop and produce safe, high-quality green products. Remember the social responsibility that we spoke about in management, Intro to Management 2110. Yeah, that transitions here. So it's all about the green products now. Train, retrain, and motivate employees in a safe workplace. Honor stakeholder commitments. So these are all the challenges. And the systems that operations managers built to convert resources into goods and services are complex. And as any function in a world where the physical and social environment is evolving, as are the laws and values. So these dynamics present a variety of challenges that come from a conflicting perspectives of stakeholders. So stakeholders are those with a vested interest in an organization, including customers, distributors, suppliers, owners, lenders, employees, and community members. These are the people you have to keep happy. And understand, too, it can get chaotic or even complex, the environment, when you're dealing with stakeholders. Two may have opposing values or conflicting value systems when it comes down to your project or, or whatever initiative you're running for the organization. So you're going to have ways of dealing and mitigating those issues. And that's where leadership comes into play. That we spoke about how leadership and management deals with stakeholder engagement in Intro to Management. So you want to take those subordinate skills you took from that course and you want to kind of dovetail them here into this course. So this concludes the Chapter 1 textbook lecture. So be sure to check Blackboard and check your expectations and deliverables that are going to be due this week. And I'm going to see you in Chapter 2.